guys, it's Lotus and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to continue on with our read-along of Erha. Let's jump right into it. Chapter 148, Shizun, a natural tease. Moran was taken aback. He had never thought Chuaning would come swinging at him, and he quickly dodged as the tip of the sword brushed past his chest. If Shizun wanted to spar with me, at least try the outfit first beforehand. Uncle is still waiting to hear back from me. Spar first, clothes after. Uncle is in a rush. The tailor is still at the palace. If there's anywhere that doesn't fit right, it'll need to be fixed. Then come at me. ... This was something Chuaning and Moran were rather alike. Both of them were people who, once the desire to fight rose, it'd be hard to squash. In between the time the two spent talking, the longsword had already struck at a number of Moran's vital points, and it was thanks to Moran's relentless training that he was able to dodge in time. Otherwise, he'd be okay, but 1,000 holes probably would have been pierced by Chuaning. The body of the sword forcefully tapped on the tip of Moran's shoulder, but Chuaning held back in time and only struck him with the side of the blade. He provoked with a jeer. Mo Zhengshi, is that the best you've got? Being cornered by this man and nowhere to put down the clothes in his hands, Moran smiled miserably. Shizun doesn't plan on going easy on me anymore, and wants to bully me instead? Chuaning's gaze was as piercing as the blade, and his sharp brows furrowed slightly. Did you think I would go easy on you forever? Haha, that's true. Are we doing this or not? Okay, I'll fight, alright? Moran chuckled and shook his head. Then a light flared from the tip of his finger. Jiangui, come! Jiangui answered the call and emerged, but since Chuaning was holding a mere ordinary weapon, Moran didn't inject any spiritual powers into Jiangui. He had only just gripped the willow vine when the sword came striking down again from his front. Moran jerked a few steps back, then suddenly whipped out the willow whip, and it wrapped around the hilt of Chuaning's sword. Chuaning didn't care, however, and he tugged with a twist of his wrist, pulling free of the bind, his form devilishly fast as he flashed behind Moran. The long blade snapped back and was pressed against Moran's neck from behind his head. Chuaning was pinned behind him, somewhat gloomy. You weren't concentrating. Again. His soft and warm breath brushed against the tip of Moran's ear, and a sudden wave of heat surged up in Moran's chest. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down against the blade. Then he chuckled darkly. Shizun, don't be so sure, so soon. Look carefully. Was I really not concentrating? At his words, Chuaning was suddenly shocked to realize that somehow Moran's willow vine had already wrapped itself around his arm and had restrained him firmly on the spot without the ability to move a single limb. Chuaning stared at his own arm for a moment. Then all of a sudden, and sharp light flashed from his eyes. Not bad. I take my words back. Moran grinned. You can't take it back just like that. What do you want then? I want Shizun to go change. Chuaning humped. Maybe when the winner's determined. As he spoke, he injected his own fierce spiritual powers into his right arm, and Jiangui was forcibly driven back. Then, with a violent tug, he pulled some distance away from Moran, while at the same time, the glint of a sword flashed past, and the aura of the sword was roused as it slashed towards Moran. Moran had no choice but to raise the whip to go against the attack, and for a time, the willow vine and the sword clashed soundly in the air. Neither of the weapons were fed spiritual powers, so there was none of the majestic sight of sparks from the clashing of spiritual current. Yet every move was a pinnacle move, flowing as smoothly as water, and one of Moran's arms still held the formal robes that Chuaning was to try. And so, Chuaning also kept to using only his right hand to spar. And in the blink of an eye, the two had already exchanged hundreds of moves, unexpectedly matched in strength, difficult to tell who was the superior. Chuaning's breath was labored. A drop of hot sweat dripped down from his ink-black sharp brow and came down straight for the eye. However, he was in the middle of competing with Moran, not to be distracted for even a second, and so that drop of sweat penetrated through his lashes and seeped into the corner of his eye. Amazingly, he endured it and did not blink, his pair of eyes blazing as brightly as fire in the night, flashing with a terrible gleam. Beidou Shenzun's combative nature was thoroughly incited by his own disciple. He had always enjoyed a good, hearty fight and competition, and he only appeared so cold and aloof because a good match was hard to come by. However, Moran was like a torch, roaring as this pool of hard liquor called Chuaning was set ablaze, instantly lighting up the infinite skies. Towards the end of the fight, the longsword surprisingly let out an ominous crackling sound because it was unable to withstand the high-pressured attacks, and in the end, as the two lunged at each other in midair, it groaned and shattered into thousands of crystal fragments between the two great zhongshis. "Even the sword is broken now," Moran said exasperatedly. "Are we gonna keep going?" There was nothing but the entwining smoke of ignited beacons in Chuaning's eyes, and he tossed the hilt aside, his white robe slightly opened, further outlining his tall and straight form. He said, simply and emphatically, "Yes. ... Before Moran had the time to put Jiangui away, Chuaning had already come lunging straight for Moran, his form keen like pulling a bowl-full taut and shooting an arrow, but also like the preying leopard in the jungle, the hawk within the snowstorm. Moran hastily withdrew Jiangui and raised and crossed his arms to block. The two then engaged in a new method of fighting to be top, fighting so hard they loathed to part from one another. Close hand-to-hand combat was different than a battle of weapons. Oftentimes, those who were bigger in build could more easily get the upper hand, never mind that Chuaning and Moran were already pretty evenly matched in skills, so in this round, Chuaning obviously got the short end of the stick. Moran chuckled. "Shizun, stop now! If you don't use your spiritual powers, then honestly, you can't beat me!" Chuaning was furious. "You arrogant, unruly disciple." "Not at all, not at all! If Shizun is mad, I can yield 10 moves to Shizun!" "Mo Wei Yu!" Chuaning flew into a rage from the humiliation, and his fists and kicks became faster and more aggressive. A whirl of high-tongue petals fell in succession, soft like snowflakes blown by the wind. Beneath the tree, the two master and disciple attacked each other relentlessly with roundhouse kicks, using every technique they knew. Another 80-some rounds later, Chuaning gradually felt his strength sapping. He had already practiced the sword for an hour before Moran came, then later fought with Moran for over 100 rounds using a weapon, so he really was already very tired. However, his eyes were bright and his heart was racing too. His handsome face showed nothing but spirit and light. The more they fought, the more entangled they became, and the wrestle for dominance was locked in stalemate. All of a sudden, Chuaning shifted and used his elbow to strike at Moran's ribs, but he was caught by Moran. The two pressed against each other, both their arms shaking. Chuaning's arms were gripped so tightly by Moran that it felt as if the rough and long fingers were going to crush him to the bones. Moran's beastly nature and the desire to conquer were also beginning to burn in this tussle between the bodies. He suddenly exerted force and finally restrained Chuaning's spiritual powers. Then, all of a sudden, he turned his hand. Chuaning jerked in a shock, but before he realized it, he already firmly reined in Moran's sweat-soaked embrace. "Are we gonna keep going?" Behind him, Moran's voice carried a smile, and his back was firmly pressed against Moran's broad chest. His heart thumped. The chest of this young man was as scalding as fire, as firm as iron, just like the molten lava, trying to swallow him whole, melt him. Moran's lips were pressed by the back of his ear. The heated breath exhaled from his mouth was spilled all over his naked nape, and since Chuaning had up a high hairdo, there was no hair obstructing the way, making him feel more keenly this terrifying beastly breath, this male scent that was practically going to rip him apart like this. Because of the sweat, in that violence there was the stickiness of entanglement, as wet as lust. "Shizun, are we going to keep going?" ... Chuaning bit down hard on his bottom lip as scarlet red crawled up those phoenix eyes. He refuses to give in. He was about to fight back when Moran's lips suddenly pushed down in this moment, and seemingly a coincidence, those lips rubbed gently past the tip of his ear, and that rough and hot feeling made Chuaning erupt in goosebumps. His hairs raised down his back, and he clenched his teeth. "Let me go!" While his words were aggressive, his body was softly trembling uncontrollably in Moran's arms, and fortunately, because the sparring drained him, Moran couldn't tell why exactly he was shaking. And the truth was, Moran was barely able to keep himself in check, so he didn't have the mind at all to notice anything amiss with Chuaning. Chuaning heard him open his mouth, his voice dark and cracked, much like the sound of thick affection, with a teasing light chuckle. "When I let go, will Shizun return to the room to change then?" Chuaning's phoenix eyes reddened from this stimulation, and he exclaimed furiously, "Let go!" His shying away only brought on a harder grip from the other, an even rougher clampdown, so much that Chuaning's arm was going to be dislocated. His body fell pliant, and in this position, in spite of himself, he accidentally let out a hoarse, soft moan. This sounded too much like the moaning in bed, and Moran froze violently, his lower regions immediately reacting. His and Chuaning's bodies were firmly pressed together right now. He was terrified Shizun would instantly notice his hot and stiff erection. As if Moran dared let Chuaning find out, he pushed Chuaning away almost in pure instinct, no longer daring to suppress the other from behind like that. It was in that split second, when Moran dropped his hands, that Chuaning broke free and stood there raging while holding the arm that was in pain from the grip. He whipped his head around and gave a hard, violent kick, using all of his strength, and sent the unsuspecting Moran to the ground. Moran wasn't expecting this guy to suddenly kick back and was completely stunned, lying there on the ground, feeling as if his ribs were broken, and he frowned in pain. "Shizun, that wind was a little dirty!" But he didn't say it out loud. Moran arduously squinted the eyes that were now watery from the pain, trying his best to raise his head to look at Chuaning. What he saw was a Shizun with his inner robes in disarray, the white silk collar pulled up widely from the aggressive tussling, revealing a field of firm and smooth chest, rising up and down from the gasping breaths. Panting, Chuaning yanked close the distorted lapels, the hairs around his forehead scattered, the hairs around his face loose, and because the match was so intense, the corners of his eyes were still laced with a little bit of red. Chuaning slowly straightened, then glared down at him from above, his chin slightly raised, his eyes burning darkly, mighty and proud. Once his breathing calmed, he said, "You've lost. It didn't matter if you're tall." Feeling conflicted, when Moran spoke, there were even bits of blood bubbling up to the corners of his mouth still. "Yeah, I've lost, haven't I? Even my bones are going to break from Shizun's kicks." ... At his words, Chuaning felt a little guilty. He was so into fighting just now. He didn't remember whether he held back in that last kick. He went over and bent down, prodded Moran's ribs and asked, "Where did I kick you?" "Here." "Does it hurt?" Of course it hurt, but he wasn't some 15-16-year-old teenager now. What form is there to cry ouch to Shizun? Chuaning noticed his face was somewhat ashen, so he reached out to take that set of clothes while his other hand strained, thinking of pulling Moran up to assist him. Yet it never came to him that his own energy was too overly drained, and Moran was both heavy and big, so he didn't succeed in pulling the man up, and instead, he fell on top of Moran. He heard the man under him let out a muffled, pained hump, and quickly sat up. Without thinking too much, he went to check on Moran's condition. Are you alright?" Chuaning's face paled. Moran's brows were furrowed and put his hand over his eyes. Move off of me first." Thank goodness he could still speak, so it didn't seem he was crushed to death. Chuaning immediately tried to get up, but someone who was totally spent often wasn't able to get up so quickly once they fell. Their legs were actually limp, and oftentimes not too stable. He didn't manage to stand and fell back in a bit of a fluster. This fall really didn't land in the greatest of places. It was right on Moran's lap. Chuaning didn't notice at first, but he was presently dressed very little. There was only a thin layer of silk fabric, and this position was so awkward that the moment he moved, he instantly felt something big and hard press on him from below, like a sword pulled at the ready. Oh dear, how is Moran gonna explain this? Okay, author's notes, mini theater, Moran's way of playing cute. Chuaning, come, let's spar. Moran 1.0, nope, I can't beat Shizun. Even if Shizun gives me 10 moves head start, I still can't beat Shizun. Chuaning, come, let's spar. Moran 2.0, what happens if I lose? If I lose, then let me take good care of Shizun, okay? Chuaning, come, let's spar. Moran 0.5, pondering look. You still have the energy to fight? Yesterday, have I not bullied you enough? Oh ho, okay. Thanks, Meatbun, for that mini theater. So, to recap chapter 148, Chuaning and Moran engage in a little battle, a test of strength. They first fight with sword and whip, and then once Chuaning's sword shatters, they fight hand-to-hand combat. And it looks like they're pretty evenly matched, but Moran actually ends up being able to restrain Chuaning. But because of how Chuaning looks, Moran starts to get a little excited. He starts to have impure thoughts again. And so he quickly pulls away, and that gives Chuaning the chance to kick Moran away. And then of course Chuaning feels really bad after. So they're just play fighting, guys. It's okay. Chuaning just wants to let loose a little bit because he often doesn't have the chance to spar like this with someone. And you know, Moran is a pretty worthy opponent now. So let's keep reading and see what happens next. Chapter 149. Shizun, I can't stand up. Chuaning, ... Moran, ... It was practically a flurry. Chuaning didn't know where he got the strength from either, but he jolted to his feet, his lips trembling minutely, his face going dark and pale and flushed in turn, looking as if he was extremely shaken, but also frightened. The mighty and powerful Yuheng elder was actually genuinely frightened? Moran was instantly disconcerted, incredibly anxious, and he sat up, holding the spot of his chest that was kicked and was now in pain. He ventured tentatively, "Shizun!" It was as if Chuaning had his tail stepped on, and he took a huge step back. Must have been hard work to be able to bulge those phoenix eyes into round circles. Seems he really was wickedly startled. Moran smiled wryly. "Sorry, I'm not... But he didn't know what to say either. Chuaning thought. The thoughts in his mind raged like the ravaging waves. "I what? I'm not what?" Why would Moran have such a reaction? Was he himself the one mistaken? But if that wasn't a reaction, then was Moran normally that hard and that big? Then how big? That godforsaken ranking violently came to mind again, written with those two words, absolute unit. Chuaning's entire face flushed bright red. He noticed Moran wanted to say more, and he jerked his hand up. "Don't say any more. Go back." Moran thought he made him upset, so why would he stick around? Enduring the pain, Moran crawled up, but when he rose, kept to a half-kneeling posture, and mumbled, "Shizun, I'm sorry, that was an accident." ... Chuaning looked at him with a complicated expression, looking as if there were many things running through his head, but truthfully, he wasn't thinking about anything. His brain was already stuck in the words absolute unit and no longer able to spin. Moran left, and Chuaning stood there rooted for a long time. The thin hairs on his arms were standing, and his entire person was both a little blank and somewhat dazed. Suddenly, he remembered a long time ago when they sought for swords at Jincheng Lake. When they were at the hot springs, Moran had accidentally slipped. At that time, the boy had also touched him due to a series of unexpected events, but the physical contact didn't last for long, and Chuaning wasn't sure if he was mistaken. But just now, Moran had uttered a sorry from his lips, that it was an accident, which meant that just now, he really did become aroused. It wasn't his imagination. Although he knew it was perfectly normal that males would sometimes become aroused from the sights they saw, yet when Chuaning reflected on himself, he didn't think there was any part of him that's attractive at all. There were plenty of people more handsome than he in the world. Could Moran like his sweaty and disheveled form? What's so good-looking about that? Nonetheless, as confused as he was, that hair-raising feeling between his legs still wouldn't die down for the longest time. And even with clothes in between, it still felt so alive, so ferocious. In that mess of thoughts, something out of place suddenly came to mind. He couldn't help but think, such a ferocious beast, if it was let loose, who would be able to take it? Chuaning bit down on his lips dejectedly, then clenched his teeth, yet the flush on his face refused to fade, and the pair of phoenix eyes remained both unfocused and utterly confused. It was like a fever, like he was wrapped by searing fire. He stood out there for a long time before returning to his room. Chuaning let down his hair, biting the ribbon between his lips, and raised his hands to gather his long hair anew, then bound it tightly, tying a ponytail. He sighed a breath, then raised his eyes to see himself in the mirror. Sharp and narrow phoenix eyes, giving off the impression of absolute authority and fierceness when he didn't smile. Unlovable. His nose ridge wasn't considerably high, the arch gentle, but the form wasn't vivid. Unlovable. His mouth... Forget it. This mouth was exactly the same as the words uttered by the same mouth, both very unkind, cold and aloof without any temperature. Of course it was also unlovable. Who knows what mind Moran lost that roused that kind of fervor? Chuaning had always been extremely conservative and obstinate when it came to matters of love. He knew very little of it, and simply touching debauched literature would make him think he'd dirtied his hands. So even after staring and pondering at the mirror for a long time, he still couldn't figure anything out. Whatever. Don't bother with it then. Yuheng Elder had never had any experience in love and told himself it wasn't like men only reacted when lust overtook the body. Maybe it was only a coincidence. The next day, Xue Zhenyang and Madame Wang stood before the mountain gate bright and early in the morning, waiting for the other three who would be attending the banquet to arrive. The first to come was Xuemeng. He normally wore the blue and silver soft armor of Sisheng Peak that somehow always appeared poignant in endowment. However, today he wore an elegant and solemn formal robe, and his hair was also done simply with a jaded hairpin, presenting him with a different air, appearing poised and stately. His shoes refined and tasteful. When he saw his parents, he was actually a little embarrassed, and he tugged at his own sleeves before speaking up. Papa! Mom! Shui Zhengyang couldn't help but praise. Meng looks so good! You and your mom are practically made from the same mold! Madame Wang had her beautiful eyes lowered and she was blushing a little, probably from her husband's compliments. She waved at Shui Meng and said, Come, Meng come over here. Shui Meng stood before her and she tilted her head up, staring at him for a while. In her eyes, there seemed to be imperceptible passing of time. A moment later, she let out a soft sigh. This outfit suits you. It makes you look fair, quite lovely. Shui Meng smiled at this. Isn't it because I was born this way thanks to Mum? Listen to your cheekiness, exactly like your dad, Madame Wang said, feeling amazed. Over 20 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Shui Meng seemed to have sensed what she was going to say next, and all of a sudden his smile froze, unconsciously taking a step back. But what good was this half a step back? He still couldn't escape his mother's nagging. Sure enough, in the next second, Madame Wang pulled him over and started earnestly. Meng we're setting off for the Ru Feng sect today to congratulate Nan Gongzi. Look at it, you're pretty much the same age as him. Isn't it time for us to discuss your marriage? Mom, I haven't thought about starting a family yet. I don't have anyone I like, Shui Meng grumbled. Mom knows you don't have anyone you like, so take this outing this time as a chance to pay more attention to the girls. She doesn't have to be from any major wealth or some great beauty. As long as her character is not bad and you fancy her, then Mother, I will definitely plan everything perfectly for you and send a matchmaker. Shui Meng was blushing now. The Baizi hasn't even been looked at yet. How did you jump to matchmaking already? Mom is only making a mention. But I'm not interested in anyone. Take the girls that we've seen in the upper cultivation world, for example, Mom. Not a single one of them is better looking than me. If I married one of them, wouldn't I be the one losing out? I'm not marrying. Nope, not a chance. Shui Meng was shaking his head like a pellet drum. Then a brilliant idea came to him, and he said, Besides, why do you guys only bother me? Maran is a year older than me, eh? Why don't you two worry about him? And my Shizun? What level do you think Yu Heng Elder is? Can you compare? Madame Wang found him funny. All right, I won't force you. Mum is just talking, asking you to pay more attention. But if there really is no one you're interested in, then that's fine. It's not like Mom will tie you up and throw you into the wedding halls. Shui Zhengyang, however, pondered for a moment, then spoke up. Well, I do think Meng is right. I did mention the matter of a cultivation partner with Yu Heng the last time. Huh? Shui Meng was shocked hearing this. Papa, you brought that up with Shizun? He didn't get mad at you? Of course he did. Shui Zhengyang smiled wryly. He kicked me out. Madame Wang, ... Shui Meng burst out laughing. Haha, see? My Shizun is a transcendent being, not a god, but akin to one. Someone like him has already cut off all desires. What need does he have for a cultivation partner? Shui Zhengyang sighed, obviously not giving up, and was just about to continue arguing with his son when suddenly Madame Wang covered her mouth with her sleeve and whispered, Husband dear, don't say any more. Yu Heng Elder is here. Amidst the morning fog not yet dispersed, Chuaning slowly walked over through the trail of verdant flagstones still damp, his long loose robe trailing on the ground, the robe itself a proper moonlight white with the hems embroidered with golden threads, flowing along with the moving of his heels as the golden threads shimmered faintly beneath the sun. His hair was bound with a white jaded hairpin, and at the end of the hairpin sat a red jewel carved in the shape of a plum blossom. His entire person was pure and clean-colored with dignity, and in that detached coldness there carried a disdainful indifference. At that moment, Shui Zhengyang suddenly felt weak, and his jaw dropped, but then closed his mouth. He thought, Shui Meng was right after all. What kind of woman could match someone like him so as to not be drowned by his splendor, or be covered by dust in the wake of his imposing grandeur? This god walked down to the mortal realm and stopped before the mountain gate. He creased his brows and looked at Shui Zhengyang. Sect leader. Haha, Yu Heng, the clothes fit you well, eh? Chuaning raised a hand, and a sachet with extremely intricate embroidery and design swung in midair. The sachet that came with the formal outfit isn't quite the same as the usual ones. It's made in Lin Yi-style knots. What about it? The divine Dao Zhang, who stood high above and out of reach from all, furrowed his brows and said, It's too hard. I don't know how to tie it. Will Sect Leader please grant guidance? Shui Zhengyang, ... He taught Chuaning 3 times, but still Chuaning couldn't figure out how the strings were wound, and in the end he gave up completely. Shuemeng couldn't watch on anymore, and he took the initiative to go up and requested permission to help tie the sachet for Shizun. It took him no time to have it hung properly by Shizun's waist, and Chuaning watched, a little surprised. He commended, "Not bad." Next to him, Shui Zhengyang's mind couldn't help but turn back around and thought, "Dear Lord, if someone like him doesn't have a cultivation partner, would he really not end up dying from lack of daily self-care?" A while later, Moran had come down too, looking kind of grim. That kick from Chuaning yesterday wasn't hard, but he was too embarrassed to seek medical attention, because there'd definitely be questions of how he got hurt and who kicked him. He couldn't just say he was kicked by Yu Heng Elder because he trifled with him, right? He could only meditate on his own and heal quietly, and he was finally a little bit better now. At least, his chest didn't hurt to the point where it was difficult to breathe. But when he saw Chuaning, who was standing next to Shui Zhengyang waiting quietly for him. This man was wearing the formal moonlight white robes embroidered with golden threads, the collar high, both looking aesthetic and dignified. What a respectable, handsome man. Moran felt something stir in his chest cavity, and the air that finally flowed in his lungs seemed to have been interrupted again, and he couldn't breathe, his breathing completely erratic. God damn it. He fell in love with a man he should never love and swore to never touch again. The old spirit that was reborn twice was now like some unfledged 20-something little lad, young and impulsive, surging with hot blood, feeling as if the world was both ending and thriving because of one look or the change of an outfit of his object of affection. From now on, his happiness had everything to do with that person. His sorrow had everything to do with that person. His heartbeat had everything to do with that person. His breath had everything to do with that person. And even the moonlight shining in upon the windowsill illuminating the solitary ant, as well as the stamen that attracted said ant, had everything to do with that person. In this love he felt tormented, very sullen, because every single petal, every single leaf was all that person, but he couldn't have him. He couldn't pick the flower. God, life is so hard. After handing over all the sec affairs over to Tanlang Elder to manage, Shui Zhengyang took the invitation and set off with his wife and company. With Chuaning in the traveling ranks, as long as there was no rush in the itinerary, they could usually ride the carriage, and this time was no different. The group went on their way in leisure, slowly as they headed down the official roads towards Linyi, stopping at various scenic spots along the way. When they encountered small-time demons and monsters, they'd exterminate them too while they're at it. They traveled thus for over a dozen days before finally arriving at Daicheng City. Daicheng City was known for cosmetics, and the moment they arrived in the city, Shui Zhengyang took Madame Wang to go buy products. Shuemeng scorned them for being an old married couple, but still acted so clingy with one another, and he rubbed his goosebumps, refusing to go with them. Instead, he went with Chuaning and Moran to go find a tea stall to sit for a bit to wait for Mom and Dad to return. Revisiting an old place, all 3 of the master and disciples were feeling somewhat amazed. Shuemeng spoke up. "Too bad Shumei isn't here, otherwise it'd be exactly the same as when we went to seek our swords 6 years ago. We could have gone to check out the top of Shuyin Peak too." Moran grinned. "Aren't you scared that the fake Gochen would still be there and would pull you back into the bottom of the lake to catch up?" Chuan increased his brows at the mention of the fake Gochen. There didn't seem to have activities of him in the past 5 years. Moran replied, "Hard to say. The past major disturbances are all unresolved cases. The ones that had to do with Shenwu, I suspect it's him, but I've no proof." Shuemeng twirled the cup in his hand and looked at Moran. "I, on the other hand, don't think those unresolved cases have anything to do with him. Think about it. Years ago, he went through great pains trying to find a spiritual body. If you were the wood elemental spiritual essence, then he'd grab you by the scruff and hurt you. So the one he's searching for should be a person, not a weapon." Chuaning was pensive, but in the past 5 years, there haven't been consecutive cases of living humans going missing. Moran propped up his chin. "I didn't run into any blockades or traps either, but there's also the possibility that he didn't know where I was since my whereabouts had been uncertain in the past 5 years. The 3 fell silent, each deep in their own thoughts, until the boss lady came with their ordered tea and candied fruits. Shuemeng scratched his head. "Do you guys think that after having done so much bad, he might have burned himself to death playing with fire? ... Don't look at me like that! Don't evil magic usually backfires easily or something?" Shuemeng grumbled. "Otherwise, how come there's been no great commotions from him? It's been 5 years!" Moran suddenly spoke up. There's one possibility. What? See, Shizun hasn't done anything in the past 5 years either. Maran hadn't finished before Shremung hit him with a chopstick. What are you trying to say? Are you suspecting Shizun to be the fake Gochen? Can you wait till I finish? Maran gripped in resignation. I'm just giving an example. I was thinking that if those unresolved cases of the Shenwu being stolen had no connection to the fake Gochen, then in the 5 years he certainly didn't cause anything great. Then is there any chance that he'd be like Shizun, where due to some sort of circumstances, like being hurt or some other reason, that he had to remain in a certain place and couldn't come out? Having said this, something suddenly came to mind and he stopped. Shizun! What is it? Maran shook his head at first, appearing as if he couldn't believe he was having this thought. But then, after a moment of hesitation, he still stammered out 2 words. Master Huaizui! In the past 5 years, the other skilled fighters didn't know, but there was obviously one man who was trapped in the Red Lotus Pavilion like Chuaning, not having taken a single step of leave. Master Huaizui. But the idea was too great of an offense. Regardless of everything, Master Huaizui had once taught Chuaning. Maran actually didn't really know how Chuaning felt about Huaizui deep down, and so he didn't dare to cross the line too much. Chuaning replied, "You can cease that thought. It wouldn't have been him." His tone was light and indifferent, but there wasn't any hesitation. And so Maran immediately nodded. Since Chuaning didn't want to talk about his past being a disciple under Huaizui, then Maran would never force any questions. He then continued his ponderings. Then, are there any other skilled fighters who haven't shown themselves in the past 5 years? Gu Yueye's sect leader Jiang Shi, Shuemeng answered. At the Lingshan conference, every sect leader showed up save for him, who begged off saying he was ill. He rarely shows himself. Maran laughed in spite of himself. He's your mom's shishong, right? You suspect him? Chuaning said, Jiang Shi thinks very highly of himself and never yielded Gu Yueyue to be below the Rufeng sect. So ever since Nangung Liu became the leader of the 10 great sects, he stopped attending any of the gatherings. It's not just the past 5 years. Then there's no one, Shuemeng said. Whatever, forget it. If we can't figure it out, then stop thinking about it. There's too many clues. My brain's hurting. It just so happened that Madame Wang and Shui Zhenyang came back just then. It was getting late, so the 5 got ready to find somewhere to settle for the night in Daicheng City. Shuemeng said, I know of an inn that's particularly nice. It even has hot springs we can soak in. Maran, ... It was a no-brainer which one Shuemeng was talking about. Wasn't it that inn they stayed at when they were younger? Back then, when they were soaking in the hot springs, he'd even brainlessly slipped and fell into Chuaning's arms. Having thought of this detail, he unconsciously cleared his throat softly and silently turned his head away, not wanting the tiny embarrassment and anticipation in his eyes to be discovered, yet his heart involuntarily started to race. Shuemeng was someone who, in truth, always spoke with some exaggeration. What he liked he'd praised with all that he's worth and completely blind to the flaws. What he disliked, he'd trample with everything he's got, beating it to death without giving any second chances. But as they say, fathers knew sons best, and Shui Zhenyang thought he could only trust half of what his son says. He turned to Maran. Ron has also stayed at that inn before, right? What did you think of it? Maran cleared his throat another couple of times and didn't dare to meet his uncle's eyes. It's indeed not bad. Then let's go. Shui Zhenyang made the final decision. Thus, Maran's hands grew sweaty, the tips of his fingers curling from the throbbing of his chest. He bowed his head and unned, appearing fully tame and gentle, but the thoughts in his head were actually, Could he be like back then and go soak in the bath with Shizun again? He subconsciously recalled Chuaning's slender and delicate body within the steaming mist, the lines of his curves sharp and taut, filled with the tension that invited violation. But if he really could bathe together with Chuaning amidst that blurring steam, could he really hold back? After discussing where to go, the others had all risen to their feet. Shuemeng had finished the peanuts in his hand, and he clapped his hands free of the crumbs, also standing up. Then he turned his head to look at his cousin, who was still sitting in the same spot with a puzzling face. What's with you? Let's go! Maran's expression was unreadable, and who knows if it was because of the reflection from the setting sun, but his handsome face seemed to be a little red. He reached out and poured himself another cup of tea, determined not to stand up and continue sitting there awkwardly. He cleared his throat softly a couple of times and said, we ordered so much and didn't finish. What a waste. You guys go ahead first. I know the way. I'll come once I finish the tea. Author's notes. Some of you should know this, but let me still give you a little TLDR, males really don't only react when in lust. When they're excited or in a very good mood, or even just out of the blue, they really will. While we're here, I suddenly remembered a response on Zuhu, kinda like a Chinese version of Quora. The poster was a boy, and once during class, he was called on by the teacher to go in front of the class to recite text. He felt mixed about it, and as he recited, for some reason, he became erect. It was a summer day. Said boy was wearing the summer uniform brief, so it was very easy to tell. The poster said that he would never forget in this lifetime his woman teacher's sweet and awkward expression, and the blush on her face, ha ha ha, lights a candle. Mini theater. Apparently Shui Meng Meng is a very picky when it comes to finding a match, as if there's a throne at home for him to ascend, so if the other characters are to change their sex, would he be satisfied? Pretty chick Mo Wei Yu. Characters modified to a girl's name. Result, pass. Reason, Shui Meng Meng gave, I can't marry my cousin. Pretty chick Shi Ming Jing. Characters modified to a girl's name. Result, pass. Reason Shui Meng Meng gave, she's beautiful indeed, demure and sweet-tempered too, and graduated from nursing on top of that. Overall not bad, it's just the bosom isn't big enough, and the arse isn't perky. The figure is somewhat lacking, so let's forget it. Let me see if there are better ones, but let me save this chick's number anyway, so if there aren't any better ones, I can consider contacting her. Pretty chick Nan Gongsi. Result, pass. Reason Shui Meng Meng gave, this woman must be the weirdest I've ever met in all my marriage matches. She has a bigger temper than me, said her family is the #1 richest clan of Shandong, and her dad is Governor Nangong. Super condescending. I was talking to her, but she only cared about walking her dog. Does she have to be so condescending like that? I'm also the only son of the village chief of Mount Shushan Sisheng Peak Village. The more I think about it, the more pissed I get. Why would I want someone like this? Oh yeah, she's also freaking boasts her wealth every day. Said she drives a Maserati every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, a Lamborghini on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and on Sundays she rides her personal jet. This show off was worse than Swagger and McSwagger. I held back my disdain and tried to comment on it nicely. It's everyone's duty to conserve energy. A girl who cares about protecting the environment is the prettiest, but she dared respond with, piss off, poor ass, mutual unfollow. Jesus, I'll be unfollowing her, all right? Let's see who can block the other the fastest. So annoying. So, in every lifetime, I'm assuming Shui Meng Meng and Nan Gongsi would not get along. Their personalities clashed way too much. Pretty chick Ye Wangxi. Result, pass. Reason, this chick is good in everything. Perfect height, gentle personality, clean family background, and though she's not very good looking, she's not bad for spending life with. I already added her as a friend and was going to invite her out to eat malatang this week. You can fill your stomach with just 16 yuan. Now, don't think me stingy. I just wanted to see if she's someone who judges people based on wealth. I was worried that she only liked me because I'm second-gen wealth, so I wanted to pretend to be a poor loser first. She did accept my invitation, but on the day of the date, when I sent Xiaoye Jie a text, it came back with, the other party is no longer your friend. Where did I go wrong? I only remember the night before, that materialistic gold-digging swaggering McSwagger Nangung dropping a pic driving her car on her friend's circle. I commented on it, then blocked her. But what does that have to do with Xiaoye Jie? Could Xiaoye Jie be gold-digger Nangung's side account? A terrifying thought. Also in every lifetime, Ye Wangxi would always stand up for Nan Gongsi and will not accept any Nan Gongsi slander. Sorry, Ye Wangxi, I may have slandered Nan Gongsi in the previous chapter, but I'm doing that because I care about you a lot and it's for your own good. Pretty chick Chuaning, characters modified to a girl's name. Result, pass. Reason, Shui Meng gave. My mama says women with ferocious looks subdues their husbands. So he doesn't want a scary wife? He doesn't want a wife that's too cold? Pretty chick Mei Han Shui. Result, pass. Reason Shui Meng gave. She is very beautiful and a little mixed blood by her looks, but I dropped her pic in one of my peer groups. There are about over 100 dudes in that group, right? And all of a sudden, over 80 of them popped out and said they slept with her. I'm instantly shook. And the key thing is, she's my dad's friend's daughter. Even now I don't know whether I should tell this to that friend of my dad's and tell her to mind her daughter more. What to do? This is urgent. Waiting online for a response. The above is the matchmaking journal kept by the straight dude Shui Meng, who has a throne at home to ascend. Tomorrow's mini-theater will update on how every pretty chick felt after meeting with Shui Meng. Oh, their point of view? Pretty chick Nan Gongsi. That dude is a weirdo. Tomorrow, let me rant about that effing chauvinistic pig. I'm so pissed. Okay, to be honest, Shui Meng did seem kind of chauvinistic and paternalistic in this mini-theater. Meatbun, you're really doing him dirty like that. But yeah, so, we'll have a continuation mini theater for this one, and we'll see what all of these prospective marriage candidates think of Shue. But yeah, okay, so to recap the main chapter, chapter 149, it's the day that they're setting off to go to the marriage ceremony, and they are all just like, you know, having conversations. Madame Wang is teasing her son about whether or not he should start looking at marriage prospects, and then they start talking about Moran and Chuaning, and they're like, you know what, I think Chuaning, it'd be kind of hard to set him up with someone because he's already too great, you know? But Chuaning does have his flaws. He has a gat moe, you know? So that's really attractive in a person too. But they head off, and then they arrive at a town to rest for the day. They go to eat, and they're just, you know, they go to do different things. Madame Wang and her husband go to look at cosmetics. Chuaning and Moran and Shuemeng go and walk around, and they're discussing about why the fake Go Chen has not been around for 5 years. They're suspecting that has he maybe gotten injured as well and was in like seclusion for 5 years, just like Chuaning? We don't quite know yet though. And then they go and eat, and then it's time to go and stop at an inn for the night. So Shuemeng suggests the inn, a hot springs inn that they went to 6 years ago when it was him, Moran, Chuaning, and Shimei. And Moran is really excited. He really wants to go back to that hot springs and maybe get a chance to bathe with Chuaning again, because he's too afraid that his feelings will show, that he hopes that the mist and the steam will hide his lust towards Chuaning, and that he can still see and appreciate Chuaning's figure in this hot spring bath. I see you, Moran, little sneaky dude there. We'll see. They are heading there, so we'll see if we get another hot spring scene. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's read along, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye!